Hare Krishna, and welcome back. We're going to be continuing our discussion from last week about Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, the Guru, and the Guru as a position, and Srila Prabhupada, the person, as distinguished from the, or distinct from the person, the position of Guru, and how they are separate and how they're interlaced. And tonight again we have Pancharatna with us, and he is going to be our main speaker. I'm going to interrogate him, and I'm going to ask the difficult questions, and he's going to give the proper answers, hopefully. And if he doesn't, then I'll chastise him.
Put me straight.
Then I'll put him straight. So, for those of you who weren't here last week, I recommend you watch the video, but we'll review a little bit. And we're talking about the position of Guru, and then sometimes when we say Guru, especially when we refer to Srila Prabhupada, we think of a person who is transcendental, who's descended from the spiritual world to the material world, and that becomes kind of like a standard conception of Guru. And then anyone who's not on that level, we kind of sometimes have to adjust. Well, how can this person be Guru? What kind of Guru is he? Is he really a Guru? And so that begs the question, well, what is the Guru? Is it the status of where they've come from? Is it the level of Krishna consciousness they're at? Is it what they know and how they communicate it? Is it what's one more important? Is one less effective? If they're less pure, can they be equally effective if they know what the pure devotees know? That kind of discussion. So in light of that discussion, we were discussing the idea that Prabhupada never really represented himself as, I am this person who is on this transcendental position, but he tended to represent himself as someone who is also struggling to some degree, maybe not struggling like we are, but somewhat, quote unquote, ordinary. Maybe not ordinary like everyone else, but not this concept of this omniscient, perfect, mystical person who knows everything, who Krishna moves according to his will, and the person who was chosen, he descended. He never presented himself that way. So how do we understand that? Why do you think he didn't present himself that way if that's who he was? Or is he presenting himself that way because he doesn't want us to go there, and that's not even important, or that's a diversion, and he wants us to understand the essence of Guru as one who is following his Guru?
Well, you've brought up a lot of questions there. Well, first we have to put Srila Prabhupada into his own words. His consistent representation of himself, as we know, is as the servant of his spiritual master. So he always presented himself as a servant. At the time that Srila Prabhupada began his movement in the West, there were many people claiming to be descendants, avatars. I mean, the whole avatar incarnation business was quite going on at that time. It still is going on. So I think on the one side, Srila Prabhupada was very careful not to encourage any sort of misunderstanding about himself. In fact, we can recall the terrible time of the 70, around 1970, I think, Janmashtami, when his leading disciples began to propagate an idea that Prabhupada was Krishna. And this was, to Srila Prabhupada, this could finish everything in his view. He became, I think, more upset, at least that I am aware of, than anything else that ever happened in our society when that happened. So that's one perspective.
Also the perspective of, that's more understandable, but the perspective of putting himself forward as the leader of the Hare Krishna movement. As many other movements, when you think of the movement, you think of the person.
Yes.
Sometimes you even call the movement by the name of that person.
Mm.
Transcendental meditation, Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi, or there's Sai Baba. We don't even, I don't know the name, even the name of his mission, we just know. his name, and so
Right.
and so it didn't seem that he at least I don't know, he wasn't pushing to be.
He wasn't. He was
it
bringing
wasn't-
attention to Krishna, and so not trying to draw attention to himself. And the whole nature of how he was organizing our movement is quite unique, with the decentralization that he encouraged, the individual initiative, the idea that every one of his disciples should become gurus in their own work. So the idea of guru as something extraordinary was not his way of teaching. He wanted us to understand that it's a simple business, in one sense, of simply delivering the message of Krishna as it is, and understanding that ultimately it's Krishna who is teaching us through Guru, through the Shastras, through the association of devotees, and in our hearts.
So then it seems for some there may be a misconception that because guru means teacher. So Prabhupada said, if I know more than you, I'm your guru. But there's this idea of guru as being very special, and the idea that you're saying, all my disciples as gurus. If you define guru as teacher, okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
We're all being trained to teach. But generally we don't use the word guru as teacher in general, but we use it as more specifically as a very elevated soul, special soul, not everyone. So, and now you're saying Prabhupada is saying everyone should be guru, and that also kind of equates his disciples in a sense in the same league or same family in a certain sense.
In one sense, but of course he also was very clear about his position as the founder Acharya of our society. And that was something I had personal experience of that when, anyway, it's a long story, but so he remained, although encouraging all of us, his disciples, to carry on his work of teaching, he at the same time wanted to restrain us, in a sense, by holding fast his personal position as the founder Acharya of our society. And I think we also have to look a little bit about the qualities of devotees. Because on the one side we're talking about guru, but guru, it means a devotee. And in the realm of devotees, there are different levels of devotees. And we hear about the Uttam Adhikari, the Mahabhagavat devotee. So in addition to his role, his relationship as a guru to his disciples, he was also a extraordinarily advanced is an extraordinarily advanced devotee. The kind of devotee that we see descending from the spiritual world. So it's not uncalled for to think of him as that kind of person.
Why was it that he never called attention to that, or felt it was necessary for us to relate with him in any other way than as a disciple should relate to a guru of any
well,
level
it's
of
not just. I mean, even for Mahaprabhu, only in a few very extraordinary situations did he reveal his personality of Godhead. So I've heard,
but he was, of course, playing the role of a devotee.
Yes, and I have heard of some intimate situations in which Srila Prabhupada let his guard down, you could say, and gave us some, or gave those who were with him at the time, some feeling that yes, he has. There's something very, very extraordinary going on here. It's not the ordinary course of affairs of guru initiates disciple, disciple learns the teaching and goes on to teach others.
Okay, I have another question about this. What Prabhupada did was unprecedented, and so
Yes.
because he did that, there seems to be the idea that he's the most qualified guru, and others were unable to do that. So is that true or not true, and how is it true, and how if it's
I don't
not
know
true?
about qualified guru. I mean, guru is, what is guru? Guru is one who teaches you the science of Krishna, who engages you in devotional service. What I would have to say is that he has shown his extraordinary qualification as a servant leader in the Krishna consciousness movement, as an acharya with the capital A. I remember during I guess it was the 80s and so on, when in our society, when we were still struggling with the whole business of guru, and in Srila Prabhupada's absence. And so at that time, there was the term acharya became quite, I would say, somewhat loosely used to refer to any of our gurus in our society. And I remember hearing people talk about, well, there's acharya, and then there's acharya with the capital A, referring to the founder acharya, the one who has a unique position and has the qualification not just to be a guru and teach others and initiate disciples, but to found a worldwide society of devotees and to remain as the spiritual leader of that society even in his absence. That is extraordinary.
Okay, so then, disciple of one of Prabhupada's disciples. Is it okay if they're more attached to Srila Prabhupada, or they see him more as their primary guru than their initiating guru? Or does there need to be, or is that a matter of the heart?
Well, I've heard, and many of our god brothers who initiate others ask their disciples to do just that, to become attached to Srila Prabhupada deeply, fully, even, like you say, more than they might be attached to their initiating spiritual master. As you know, we have the initiating guru and the instructing guru, diksha and shiksha. And for all of us, Srila Prabhupada is our shiksha guru. And not just a shiksha guru, but our primary shiksha guru. It's from him that we go when we really want the siddhanta on an issue.
Okay.
We go to him.
What if the opposite is the situation, where a disciple feels, I don't really have a connection with Prabhupada, I only have a connection with my guru? Is that wrong? Is that bad? Is that detrimental? Should they work their way up the ladder, so to speak?
Well, in our society, I mean, I guess you have to distinguish between emotional connection or some sort of, I wouldn't say spiritual necessarily, but a connection, a relationship connection, and a connection in relationship to studying his books. If someone says, well, I can't relate to Srila Prabhupada's books, and I can only relate to my guru's words, I can relate to what he says, but I can't relate to what Srila Prabhupada says. That's a problem in our society, because everything is based on Srila Prabhupada and his now understanding what Srila Prabhupada says. If you have a problem,
well, someone could say, I really don't understand as well what Srila Prabhupada says unless I hear it from my guru or this other devotee. They explain it because of their experience.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm not attached to Prabhupada, but I'm more attached to hearing from this person because they're giving me a better understanding of Srila Prabhupada.
And what would be wrong with that? If someone is, if the conclusion is the same, that you're getting to understand Srila Prabhupada better, and your appreciation of Srila Prabhupada is deepened, your attachment to him as the leader of our society, and your enthusiasm to study his books is enhanced, then everything is fine.
Okay, but couldn't you say also that by serving his disciple, you're serving him? Because his disciple is helping Prabhupada spread the mission? Because I know there are disciples, or maybe at certain stages of their advancement, where they look at Srila Prabhupada and say, I can relate to my guru, but Prabhupada is distant. I can't relate, and like you said, well, there's a personal relationship there with the living guru, that you get personal guidance.
Yes.
You can be corrected, you can be chastised, you can be acknowledged, encouraged.
I don't think there's, I mean, what's the difference? If we develop a strong, tangible relationship with Srila Prabhupada, where that's the sentiment, the emotion, the feeling is very strong directly for him, or it's for one of his disciples who is serving him, and it's all together. It's like, here's my guru and his guru and his guru's guru, and it's all one parampara. And that I believe that Srila Prabhupada was encouraging us, and especially if we start to think about generations from now, when the Srila Prabhupada will be, the connection will be several generations removed in terms of those who had personal connections, that the relationship will have to deepen to a point where it's based on appreciation of his work and his qualities and his extraordinary nature, and it's felt through his disciples and the disciples of his disciples and so on. That's where we feel it. That's where we get. And then it may also have, it does happen. I've heard stories about people who's in dreams, Srila Prabhupada comes to them and so on. So
people who aren't his disciples. Okay, so I have another question. Sometimes it may happen, not that it may happen, it does happen, that someone has a Siksha Guru or a Diksha Guru, and that Diksha or Siksha Guru says something to them that appears to be different from what Prabhupada said. It's either the way they're interpreting what Prabhupada said, or it seems to be their own idea, like a major twist on it. How does a disciple deal with that? I mean, should they defer to their understanding what Prabhupada said? Should they just accept that my guru has a different opinion and he has the right to that opinion, but it doesn't seem to be what Prabhupada wanted? Should they approach their guru and tell them, I don't think this is in agreement with Prabhupada? Should they think, I misunderstand and it is in agreement and I don't have the capacity or intelligence to understand? Well, I would say more specifically, if other people also disagree with what that guru is saying, and you're not just feeling it's my subjective view, but other people are disagreeing.
Yes.
How, as a disciple, does one deal with that?
Yeah.
Because we have this idea of, absolute faith in guru, absolute trust. Whatever the guru says is, I have to take it as my life and soul.
This comes into the realm of the the way we interpret both Srila Prabhupada and our individual teachers. Srila Prabhupada, and we hear it very often, and it is sadhu, shastra, guru, that we have a process of interpretation based on sadhu, shastra, and guru. Now, in that...
But one could say, but that could appear to be offensive, because now I'm taking the instruction of my guru and I'm holding it up to the light of shastra and sadhu. So therefore, it would look like I'm doubting what he said, or I'm not sure what he said. Or
you're not understanding it and you're confused.
That would be different. Confused and not...
Yes.
But as the checks and balances.
If you're doubting, then you have an issue. You have a situation. You have a guru. Your guru is telling you something, and you're hearing from another advanced devotee something different. You're studying yourself. You're coming to some sort of a different conclusion. Where do you stand? This comes back, I guess, to a little bit to where we were in our last session, where we talked about Srila Prabhupada's disciples entering into argumentation with Srila Prabhupada, debating with him. In this type of situation, you have several options. One is to enter into a debate. It's not offensive.
As long as the guru doesn't think it is.
As long as the guru doesn't think it is.
As long as he's open.
If he's open to it,
or
he's open to discussion, then you're on safe ground.
And if he isn't?
If he isn't, then you have, as out of etiquette, out of your relationship with the guru, there is a need to defer in terms of how you represent that topic in your... You'd have to recognize, at least give reference to, well, according to my guru, this is like this. I don't understand it in this way, and I've heard other things, and I leave it up to you. So you get into a very delicate situation when it comes to it. Unfortunately, I don't find myself in that situation.
Well, you have this. It's said that the Siksha Guru should always be supporting the instructions of the Diksha Guru.
Yeah.
But it seems in this case, the Diksha Guru should be supporting the instructions of our Supreme Siksha Guru.
But who's to say he isn't?
Yeah.
In terms of his understanding, we have to assume that he simply has interpreted those instructions in a way that someone else has not. Now
we have apparently a difference here. When we heard Prabhupada say, "You understand Srila Bhaktisiddhanta through me," not directly, or at least when we were younger devotees, he said, "You won't understand. You go through me." But after Prabhupada's disappearance, it seemed to be not the same. That you can go directly to Srila Prabhupada, read his books. There's apparently no necessity of guru per se to help you understand. I mean, it may help you,
yes,
but not necessarily do you need that help. Or is that true? Are things different? Or would it be weird to say, no, you can't understand Prabhupada's books unless you go through me, I'm your guru? Or is there some gray area in between, or is it individual?
Here's an area I think we have to recognize there are different opinions. My personal opinion, based on Srila Prabhupada's statements about his books, statements about himself, that I will live forever in my books and so on, indicate that he believed and encouraged the generations to follow to have a direct relationship with him through his literature, through his writings. Not that they would need to have an intermediate in order to understand him. His effort was such that he really wrote and spoke and worked in such a way to present Krishna consciousness for generations and generations to come in simpler terms and more relatable and easier ways to understand. And he created a society to carry that on. At the same time, he expected his disciples to continue teaching what he taught. So, and to assist others in understanding what he's presented. So, no, I don't think that he wanted the members of our society to feel distant in that way, and that they would need an intermediate. And it's also not a fact. I mean, how many of our members today derive their primary, they have a very direct relationship with Srila Prabhupada. They read his books. His books, we know in our days, we had the Brahma Samhita. That's it. We didn't
Bhakti
have
Siddhanta's
from Bhakti
commentary,
Siddhanta.
or Jiva Goswami's commentary. The Bhakti Siddhanta presented it.
Yeah. We didn't have anything else. So there were of course, most of it was all in Bengali, so it wasn't.
But at the same time, in our culture, reverence, absolute faith in the Guru, hearing from the Guru, these are all important aspects. So it seems there's some modification within the context of ISKCON that a disciple can kind of go either way in terms of where they get their main siksha. Not that they wouldn't have faith in their Diksha Guru or their Siksha Guru, but they could repose most of their faith in Srila Prabhupada or more of their faith in their Guru, still keeping Prabhupada as their ultimate Siksha Guru, or everyone's ultimate Siksha Guru. And the balance will develop according to their need, according to their advancement, while you still always maintain this balance of respect, I mean, for both Srila Prabhupada and
yes,
your Guru.
And naturally, I mean, the system is supposed to be that, at least in our society, that a devotee who is committed to the path of Krishna consciousness begins by having a relationship with Srila Prabhupada in Shiksha, and other of his, other devotees who begin to teach him. Of those devotees who begin to teach him, one or two or whatever, they start to become closer, and the devotee begins to identify or feel a relationship with one of these people and ask them to give them initiation. But the first relationship with Srila Prabhupada doesn't go away. So,
so in a sense, that initiation should really enhance the relationship with Prabhupada.
Yeah. I would think so.
Yes. So you were mentioning hermeneutics.
Mm.
Can you explain to us what that means and how we understand that in relation to Srila Prabhupada?
Well, hermeneutics means, literally, the study of interpretation. So it's not interpretation, it's the study of interpretation. So it's an academic field, but it involves looking at how we interpret the acharyas, how we interpret Srila Prabhupada. What is the way that we do it?
Through what lens? Through what?
Yes, there are different in hermeneutics. There are different schools of thought. There's what you would call, I think it's called the Romantic school, which is that you basically you look at the words of a teacher or a scripture in its context. You take the context of the teaching. You take the broad. You don't isolate it. You don't separate it out from what it's connected to understand it. And that's basically was the attempt of many classical philosophers, theologians, and so on, to interpret the Bible, etc. In more recent years, different philosophers and theologians and so on have developed other approaches to interpretation, including just the text is the text, and it stands on its own. Reading the text through the environment of today and interpreting it, sort of updating the interpretation to fit today's times, and then putting your own. Then there's the problem of what you're putting into it, looking at your own bias and your own conditioning when you read something, how you're taking it. So looking at that aspect.
So
there's many different.
Is there a conclusion? There's no absolute objectivity. Well, anyway,
there's always interpretation.
How does this relate to how devotees or scholars or people in general will view Srila Prabhupada, or at least how should we be aware of that as devotees? Should we be aware that this is how people will see Prabhupada, or is that going to harm our faith?
I think we ourselves need to look at and develop our own theory of, or you could say, understand the Vedic or Shastric theory of interpretation. How do we interpret a text? Looking at the acharyas, looking at to see how they approached the scriptures, looking at how they dealt with different things and how they interpreted and how they brought the scripture from, whether it is the Gita or the Puranas or the whatever, how they brought those scriptures into the present time. Now, in our situation with Srila Prabhupada, it's how do we bring Srila Prabhupada from where, from the time that he was speaking and into our present time. How do we, because our lens is, like you say, our way of understanding things has changed in because of our experiences and so on in the world as it is today. So how do we see things as they are? That we need to look at it. We need to look at just the process of contextual. How do we put things into context? How do we deal with?
Well, let's talk about that. The context that Prabhupada came in of society 45 years ago, whatever it was, is different than society today.
Yes.
So then one could argue, if he were alive today, he would not be doing the things that he did then because society is different. Or one could argue he would do the same things because these are absolute principles and absolute teachings, and it depends on the purity of the person and the message. And so how do we address that? Is there validity to both, or either one, or one holds more weight or one doesn't?
Well, in hermeneutics, one thing that is I think applicable here is to see the subject through the author. So if we try to look and understand Srila Prabhupada through his eyes, by trying to understand his eyes, trying to understand how he was seeing things, how he saw the world, and that you can only do by looking at all of his work. You can't take it in one small place. You have to look at his personality and his way of expressing things and his particular style, you could say, to understand his meaning in something, and to understand what is, like you say, an absolute principle that can't change and should never change, and what is relative, subjective, time, place, circumstances.
This can be very controversial.
Of course.
And so some people will tend to err on the side of being conservative and saying, well, possibly he would have changed, but we're safer if we don't. And then, and the other side will be, you belong in an antique shop if you don't change, because the world is changing and you're not relevant.
And you have to look at Srila Prabhupada himself. What would he want? Ultimately, it boils down to in my view, the intention, the meaning, the desire of the, in this case, the author or the source, the acharya. He's our acharya. We have to understand his desire. Our goal is to fulfill that mission. If we say, it's too difficult and we can't, we're faced with a situation which appears to warrant some adjustment. For example, I'll give you the inclusion of ladies on our governing body commission. This is something that did not take place during Srila Prabhupada's time. We have different statements that Srila Prabhupada has made about the role of women, etc. Now, we're faced with a situation, contemporary situation, in which we have very qualified ladies, devotees, Vaishnavis. We have needs where there's a real need. The most qualified person for the job happens to be a lady. So where's the principle? What do we do here? We have a number of different statements of Srila Prabhupada. We can't ask him directly. So we have to go through his work. We have to see various situations. We have to bring out and bring forth our best understanding of what he wants and desires, and by use of our intelligence.
I think it's one of the things I do, which I think is really a good caution for all of us, is if we're interpreting, if we need to interpret something because it's a confusing situation, we make a decision. Hopefully, we'll make a decision with other devotees, and then we just look at it, and we have to be detached enough to look at it and say, "Okay, we've made this decision. It's possible this is not the correct decision." Instead of coming in, "Well, I've made the decision. I know this is right. Krishna's revealed it to me. I've studied Shastra. I've thought about it. I've read about it. I've taught about it. I know I'm right." I think that can be a little dangerous. We may naturally feel that way. We may be getting that inspiration from within. We may be illusioned also. So it's always good to be a little detached and say, okay, maybe let's see if this is working according to what I understand Krishna conscious symptoms to be, if I'm doing something which is in line with our teaching.
And I think it's important, though, to also distinguish that I would say 99% of these issues that we speak of are not inherently philosophical issues. They have to do with practice. They have to do with the application of our philosophy in practical life. When it is a real philosophical issue, then we have to be even more careful. When it's something that's practical application, like you say, we make a decision, but we remain open to changing or making some other acknowledging that we may have been wrong. We're careful not to change, to think many times before making changes. These are all qualities that I think Srila Prabhupada wanted us to use in our mission. But when it comes to a point of philosophy, of how we interpret the Gita and Srila Prabhupada's Krishna's statements in the Gita and Srila Prabhupada's purports, then we have to really, really be very, very careful.
But here's a problem.
Yeah.
Prabhupada said something, and we go to previous acharyas. Our tradition appears to be that something else has been said. And so then we begin to think, perhaps Prabhupada just said this for us, because he wanted us to see it or understand it in a particular way. But it's not actually the way it's to be understood, but we can't understand it any other way for whatever reason. Now someone could say, well, that's your interpretation.
Yes.
And it's very clear what Prabhupada said. He just accept he said it because it's true.
Yes.
How do we deal with a situation in which it's confusing because so many of the past acharyas may not have said it exactly in the same way, or have apparently disagreed?
Yes, and Srila Prabhupada acknowledges this, that there are some details, not in big principles, but in details, where acharyas disagree. And we have to accept somehow that there are two different positions here.
Okay, so for a disciple, one would say, well, as a disciple, I should accept what my spiritual master said is true, rather than saying he said something just to pacify us, or because we couldn't understand and any other way. Now, someone else might say, no, you should see that way, because then you're understanding the mind of the Guru or the intention of the Guru. As you say, you should understand why he does it.
And it would seem that that is a choice that is very heavy and would need to be made. Of course, the safe choice is to accept the just as you understand it now, and just say, well, this is my Guru's interpretation. That's the best for me. He's my Guru. He's giving me this interpretation. I don't have the intelligence, the learning, the study, the spiritual advancement to come to my own conclusion on this. Let me accept what my Guru says as it is. That's safe. Now, if all around you there are others who say, no, this is, you're not getting the point here, you're not really understanding properly, then it's still safe. It's to just stay with where you're comfortable. It's always safe to accept the understanding that is most obvious. Now, if there's, particularly if the other thing is to say, well, the words are not what they are saying. These are words meant for someone else, not for you. I believe this is the case with some of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writing, where he talks about the Bhagavad, it talks about various hellish planets and things like this, in a way that represents the philosophy as allegorical. And doing that from one point of view, one school of thought, is that he's saying this because he's addressing an audience that would not be able to digest anything else. But apparently there's evidence from him about that he
What, to support the allegory?
To support that he spoke in this way for a certain purpose. So we find that with Srila Prabhupada also, that he sometimes said, well, I say like this to this particular group. So there are situations where Srila Prabhupada would represent or talk about, for example, when he talks to Christian priests and so on, he might downplay certain aspects of the theology of Vaishnavism to focus in on the main point he's trying to represent. So it's again taking things in their context. And those are, to do this, to do what you're speaking of, to be able to understand the mood and intention in some situation which seems to be contradictory or doesn't fit other places. This is an area where the theory of interpretation and how the practice of interpretation comes into play, and it's a complicated process, and it can be very simple, but it can be also very, how you should say, time consuming in a sense, to go through and look at everything and study it from different points of view, and to discuss it with other devotees and try to just come in a group towards your best conclusions.
And also to recognize sometimes you're not studying it. You've already made up your opinion, and you're only studying it to support your opinion, and you don't even realize you're doing that.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
I want to see if there's some discussion here. So, what's going on out there? Let's see. She's saying, please forget this if you have already covered this. How do you understand we are to take initiation? How do you understand if you're ready? In a sense, if you have to ask, you're probably not ready. Just like if you're asking, how do you know if you're hungry? If you are, here's a, I think it's an important point we can discuss here, that in our movement there's this whole concept of you have to take initiation, because that's what the Shastra says. So there's some pressure there to find a guru and take initiation. Kind of like maybe in certain cultures, if you're a young girl, there's pressure to get married. There's women after a certain age, if they're not married, they're looked down upon. So maybe you haven't found a man, but you're desperately trying to find one just because you need to be accepted. So initiation is not like that. What I think is more important, or most important, is that when someone wants to develop Krishna consciousness, if there's someone that they're connected to that can help them, that's what's important. And when that can, because a lot of people are not ready for initiation, and they don't look for the connection of somebody because they think, well, why should I be connected? I'm not ready. Yeah. Or perhaps I'll never be connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I personally, for example, I help many devotees, and I see that they need a connection with someone that they can go to and ask questions, and someone who can encourage them and sort things out for them. So we have this connection, and it helps them tremendously. They may see me as Siksha Guru, they may see me as a friend, whatever, but there's a connection there. So then everybody needs that on some level. And in your practice of Krishna consciousness, if that connection becomes very strong, and there's a strong desire to please and serve that person, and if that person's willing to initiate you, then that becomes natural. And if the person is not willing to initiate you, it's still a natural relationship, and that person can remain as your guru in the form of your instructor, and then you'll still want to be connected to the disciplic succession, and you will find someone according to your desire. If you don't have the desire, Krishna won't show you. So all our service should go through somebody. Of course, you could say, well, it's going through Prabhupada, I'm connected with Prabhupada. That's true. But still, Prabhupada's not going to chastise you unless you're very special and he comes in dreams and chastises you. I don't know. So she's also addressing making changes to Prabhupada's books, still attributing to the original author, or it is better to write additional books. That's a whole other subject, but that is the premise that changes were made, as opposed to changes were initially made when they didn't understand Prabhupada's accent, and now the changes that they're making are not changes to what Prabhupada said, but the changes back to what he said.
Yeah, we should be very, very clear about this, that Srila Prabhupada's books were edited.
By his request.
By his request. He wanted his books to be, he understood, I mean, his first publication, the books that he printed in India, he said right in his purport that although irregularly composed, still this should be accepted.
Meaning the English was
the English was, and the mistakes in the first editions are voluminous. And as soon as he had some qualified devotees who knew English very well, an English professor, others, he asked them to edit. So the issue, what's happened and when there was, later on, when there was mistakes found, he asked them to be corrected. So what's changing is not the, what's being changed is the editing. And so that should be very clear.
To become closer to the original. The second point you were making is it better to write additional books? Well,
one thing I want to ask all of the audience here, if you have any questions about this, please visit bbtedit.com. This is a website that's dedicated to this issue. It's filled with questions and answers, video interviews with 20, 30 different people, historical documents. You can see for yourself what, in the case of the Bhagavad Gita, there's the 78 edition, with the markups of the editing, with annotations, why a particular thing was corrected or changed. So it is well worth your while if you're confused or interested or concerned about this question to visit that site. And if you still have questions, then on the site there's a place to click and ask more questions.
Well, I think one of the concerns for some people is that Prabhupada didn't want this done, and this was done in an unauthorized way. So what we've learned is that actually he it's not unauthorized. He did want it. He did want it done. And the person who made the changes was the same person who was making the changes during Prabhupada's presence, who asked him to do it. He wouldn't have done it if he wasn't asked.
Yes.
So it was a service. Now your second question relates to your first question. So the second question relating, you're saying, well, is it better to leave them as they are and then just write additional books? Well, we've discussed the first part, but writing additional books to explain Prabhupada's books is a tradition that's always done, and even you'll find those who write the books write commentaries on their own books. Right. What to speak of others writing commentaries? So that's a tradition. Commentaries are written, and Prabhupada wanted us to write, and writing our own books, it's not a crime. And Prabhupada said that sannyasis should write books. That's their service. It's one of their services anyway. Bhakti Carol says, about initiation, I asked this when you were speaking about Srila Prabhupada's books instructions, whether we need someone else to interpret his instructions. So I think I think, when Prabhupada was with us, we had classes, and so our godbrothers and sisters were elaborating on what Prabhupada taught. That's just the process. And many times they would express things that I didn't understand. I said, I didn't know Prabhupada meant that. So it's kind of simultaneously one and different. You have access to his books, here they are, but you also have Sangha to be able to enter more deeply. And there may be many things that even after so many years we won't understand, that somebody helps us understand. So it's, or understand more deeply. Maybe I did understand it, but now I'm understanding more deeply because you understand it better than I do. So it's not an if or, it's just part of the process that the books are we read the books and we discuss the books.
Yes.
Both things are going on.
Yes.
So now she's saying, is there a question as to whether he actually read the finished books and passed approval on them? or as my understanding, he didn't.
No, very rarely. Some, but there's an example just as in terms of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. There was 2 editions during his presence, and the first edition was revised and by Jayadvaita Swami, and he went to Srila Prabhupada and began to explain his revisions, and Srila Prabhupada stopped him and says, "So what have you done?" And so Jayadvaita said, "I've tried to bring it closer to your original words." And Srila Prabhupada said, "Okay, that's all right," and just stopped it. He had a lot of faith, trust in his editors. Not always. There were a couple of times, particularly with the Sanskrit editors, that where he found some places where they were playing around with things, and some other places where Hayagriva. There were some times where it was brought to his attention.
Yes.
It wasn't that he went through it himself, but others did, brought it to his attention, and he responded.
Yes, exactly. Okay. How to bring young kids to Krishna consciousness. You become Krishna conscious, they'll watch you, and they'll become Krishna conscious. You know, I think there's perhaps a misunderstanding, maybe an illusion, that what you say affects people. And studies show that what you say is only 7% of what you communicate. You communicate by your own internal consciousness, you communicate by your behavior, you communicate with body language, you communicate with tone of voice. Just like right now I could speak like this and put you to sleep and sound like a robot. So even though I'm saying the same thing, it's probably going to make it difficult for you to understand. So then you'll probably get 3%. Whereas if I talk like this and I'm animated, maybe you'll get some more of what I'm saying because it's more interesting, isn't it? So what people see, what your children see, is what impresses them. If you say, "Oh no, I did this, but don't you do it," they're going to think, what's going on here? So creating a proper environment at home, creating a culture. I don't know if you've ever heard, they have stories where children were lost, or somehow or other they were raised by apes. I don't know exactly how it happened, but studies in anthropology where they found the child was abandoned or in some way lost, and he was raised by apes or gorillas, and he became socialized. So he was fundamentally, basically, thinking and acting like a gorilla. And when he was finally found, it took years and years and years to humanize him. So our culture is created by who? By us. And the culture that your kids are raised in is what's going to mold them. And the problem is, if you live in the West, or it doesn't even matter now, if you live in India, anywhere, the culture is becoming more and more materialistic. And the more we allow our children to interface with that culture, the more they're going to be affected by it. So at least at home, there has to be a very Krishna conscious culture. And that's where they get. I mean, I had an experience. I was just in Delhi. I was in India, and I was leaving from Delhi, and a friend of mine's son was in Delhi, and I didn't know it was him until he introduced himself. And he is living in Mauritius, which is a island that was taken over by the French. So in Mauritius, Creole, which is kind of a broken French, is the main language. So they speak with a French accent. But they also speak English, and they go to schools with English. But because Creole is the predominant language, they speak with a French accent, which is kind of awkward if you've never met an Indian who has a French accent. It throws you off for a while. But anyway, so this young man came and introduced himself. He said, "Do you remember me? I'm so-and-so." I said, "I don't remember you because the last time I saw you, you were 6 years old." But in any case, his father is Mauritian and his mother is British. And he has a completely British accent. Because now his parents are divorced, he's living with his mother. And I thought it was very interesting. There's no trace of a French accent in his voice because he's with his mother, who's British. So the strongest influence is at home. because all his friends have this accent. Everyone in the school has the accent. Everyone he meets in the whole entire country has the accent. But his mother has a British accent, so he has one. So, it just goes to show. So I think we should end here. I hope we didn't confuse you too much. I hope this may have broadened your vision. That Guru, as Prabhupada said, Guru means one who's representing his Guru. Guru means one who is teaching what his Guru has taught, is following the instructions of his Guru, who's initiated by a Guru, who's continuing the disciplic succession through his instructions and his behavior. That's the meaning of Guru. And there are different Gurus on different levels. Some are conditioned souls who are becoming pure. Some are conditioned souls who've become pure. Some are liberated souls who were never conditioned. But their function is the same, to bring people back to Krishna. And Gurus do it together. It's not only one. It's not just Prabhupada. It's not just your Guru. It's Sangha. It's everyone together. It's a society. We're all helping one another. We need all of us to function. So Pancharatna is going to have the closing words here.
Hare Krishna. That's it. Hare Krishna.
He's happy. He's happy with me. I said the right thing at the end. Okay. So next week we're going to talk about something very special. We're going to talk about sadhana. Sadhana means the practice of bhakti. And one of the reasons we're going to talk about sadhana is because in 3 weeks from now, Easter weekend, we're having a sadhana retreat about an hour from Alachua, Florida. That's April 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And Pancharatna and I will be there, along with Mother Lakshmi Mani and Badahari. And we're going to go away at a retreat center for a whole weekend. And we're going to associate with one another. We're going to get up early in the morning. We're going to chant together. We're going to have programs together and classes and workshops all day. And have kirtan in the evening and very nice prasadam. We're going to have a weekend where we can focus on our sadhana and our practice. A real transcendental vacation. And the idea for this came from my many experiences of doing japa workshops, where I realized that the real thing that was going on during the workshop was the association. It was just devotees coming together. And magic happens when devotees come together. And so much is realized, and so many problems are solved in that sangha. So, if you would like to come, and I encourage you to come, I'd like to see all of you there. It's going to be a wonderful weekend, a weekend you will never forget. You go to bhaktilife.org. Very easy to remember, bhaktilife.org. And on the home page there, you will see a button to click under the sadhana retreat, and it will give you all the information you need. Or, if you want to talk to a live person, you can call the number 4, Bhakti Yog. Bhakti and the word Y-O-G. 4 Bhakti Yog. Or you can call, what's the other one? We have another one. Just to make it easy for you. What's the other one? We forgot the other
352-327.
No,
8108.
You have another one, Bhakti.
Oh, yes, we also have Bhakti 108. 4 Bhakti 108.
4 Bhakti 108.
Yeah.
So it's either 4 Bhakti Yoga or 4 Bhakti 108. You can call us, and we'll give you all the details. Many of the devotees here from Alachua will be there. We hope to see you if you can get that weekend off. Weather is nice down here. I don't know if you live up north. It's going to be in the mid-80s down here at the end of April.
Yeah.
Be in like the 70s in the morning. So it'll not only be a transcendental vacation, it'll be a vacation from the cold weather. And you'll get to see the beautiful deities of Krishna and Balaram and visit the wonderful community of Alachua, where there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wonderful devotees, plus over 100 disciples of Srila Prabhupada. More disciples of Srila Prabhupada in any one place than anywhere in the world. So we hope to see you there, and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare